I don't talk about faith very often. Not because I'm ashamed of it. I'm not. But because the world has a way of twisting anything sacred into something sensational. And faith, at least in my life, was never a headline. It was a quiet seed planted in moments no one saw. But lately, I've been thinking about the path that brought me here. And if I'm being honest, brutally honest, it wasn't an easy one. There were years when I felt lost in ways I didn't know how to explain. Not the kind of lost where you take the wrong subway line or forget where you parked your car. I mean the kind of lost where your soul feels like it's drifting out to sea, and no matter how strong you swim, the shore keeps pulling away. I remember the first time I felt that pull. It was after my father left. People talk about abandonment like it's a single event. A door closing, a last phone call, a final goodbye. But it isn't. Abandonment is a slow echo that repeats for years. It shapes you. It teaches you to expect disappointment even in places where love exists. I didn't understand faith back then. I didn't understand God. All I understood was emptiness. But here's the first cliffhanger in this confession. I didn't know that God was already moving in my life, through strangers, through small gestures, through moments too delicate to recognize. The first time I felt something like divine intervention, I didn't have a name for it yet. I was a teenager. I had just moved again. Another school, another city, another attempt at pretending I was okay. I was sitting alone on a bench after class, trying to hide the fact that I was holding back tears. Not dramatic, cinematic tears. Quiet ones. The kind you swallow because you don't want the world to see you breaking. An old woman sat beside me. I didn't know her. I didn't even notice her arrive. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't try to cheer me up. She simply placed her hand on mine, gently, respectfully, and said, "You're not alone." It felt like the simplest sentence in the universe, but something in it cracked me open. I didn't know it then, but that was my first brush with something I would only later recognize as grace. And it wouldn't be the last. Years later, when I lost my best friend River Phoenix, people assumed I was coping because I was quiet about it. But quiet doesn't mean healed. Quiet doesn't mean strong. Quiet just means you're trying not to let the world collapse under your feet. River's death was one of the first times I truly felt the need for God. Not because I wanted answers, grief rarely offers them, but because I wanted a place to rest the weight I was carrying. I remember walking alone late at night in Los Angeles, hands shoved deep in my pockets, head down, no destination in mind. The city lights blurred like they didn't want to be seen. I wandered until I found myself in front of a church. Big wooden doors, candles flickering inside. The kind of place people enter when they have nothing left to lose. I pushed the door open. Inside, it was empty. No priest, no choir. No visitors. Just silence. I sat in the back row, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. And for the first time in years, I prayed. The prayer wasn't poetic. It wasn't profound. It wasn't something you'd put in a movie script. It was just, "Help me." That's all. 2 words, 2 syllables. But those 2 syllables were the beginning of everything. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was talking to the ceiling. I felt like someone, something, was listening. The strange thing is, I didn't suddenly become religious. There was no flash of light, no vision, no angelic voice saying my name. What I felt was calm. A kind of calm I didn't know how to access on my own. I walked out of that church different than when I walked in. Not healed, not whole, just held. And yet, This is where the real conflict of my story begins. Because finding a spark of faith is one thing. Following it, trusting it, risking something for it, that requires something deeper. It requires surrender. It requires humility. It requires strength I didn't know I had. The next story I'm going to tell you is the moment I realized that following Jesus wasn't a comfort, it was a calling. And callings, they cost something. And the moment I realized what it would cost me, I almost walked away from it entirely. Looking back now, I realize there's a moment in every person's life when faith stops being an idea and becomes a decision. A crossroads, a place where you can't keep living the way you lived before. For me, that moment didn't arrive in a holy place, or during an emotional prayer, or in some dramatic movie scene revelation. It came during a year that looked perfect from the outside. A year when the world assumed I was thriving, successful, grounded. But on the inside, I was falling apart in ways no interview or magazine cover could reveal. It was the year I lost both Jesse and Jennifer. People know pieces of that story. They know the headlines. They know the dates. They know the tragedy. But they don't know what happened inside me. Grief didn't hit me like lightning. It seeped in slowly, quietly, like water under a locked door. Every morning, I'd wake up with the same question. What am I still doing here? I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't reckless. I was empty. Emptiness is the kind of pain that makes you function normally on the outside, while your soul erodes silently from the inside. You learn to laugh politely. You learn to answer questions with half-truths. You learn to work as if your body is a machine and your heart is optional. During that period, I had a habit. After shooting, or after meetings, or after wandering aimlessly through the night, I'd sit alone in my apartment with all the lights off. Sometimes for hours, sometimes until the sun rose. Silence can heal you, but it can also unmake you. One night, I was sitting there, staring at nothing, when something strange happened. A thought entered my mind, but it wasn't like my own thought. It felt placed. You don't have to carry this alone. I froze, not because I heard a voice. I didn't. It wasn't auditory. It was internal, but it was unmistakably not mine. I sat there, still as stone, holding my breath without meaning to. The thought came again, softer this time. You are not alone. I didn't know whether it was God. I didn't know whether it was memory, or exhaustion, or hope wearing a disguise. But it felt real, more real than anything I had felt in months. Here comes the cliffhanger, the part I never told anyone. Instead of comforting me, those words terrified me, because if God was reaching out to me, then I had a responsibility, a choice, a path I could no longer ignore. And following God, truly following, meant giving up the illusion of control I had spent years building. It meant surrendering my grief. It meant trusting something invisible. It meant risking the fragile walls I built around my heart. I wasn't sure I could do that. I wasn't sure I wanted to. So I did the one thing I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I went for a walk. It was late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. Los Angeles was quiet in a way that never feels natural, like the city was holding its breath. I walked with no direction, no destination, just letting my feet guide me while my mind spiraled. At some point, without noticing, I passed by a small church. It wasn't the same one from my younger years. This one was worn out, paint peeling, cross slightly crooked, windows dark. But the door was open. At that hour, that made no sense. I pushed it gently. It creaked, loud enough to make me wince. Inside One single candle was lit at the front, tiny, trembling, determined to exist despite the darkness. I sat in the back row again, like before, but this time I didn't pray. I just breathed. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time feels different when you're unraveling. Then an old man walked in, very old. White hair, slow steps, wearing a simple sweater and holding a small Bible. He looked at me, smiled softly, and said, "You're early." "Early for what?" I asked. "For the moment God reaches you," he said. "Most people come right after." I swallowed hard. He didn't sit beside me. He sat 2 rows ahead, hands folded, looking at the candle. After a long silence, he said, "Sometimes God doesn't shout. Sometimes he whispers, because he wants us to choose to lean closer." Those words, they cut straight through the fog inside me. I felt tears burning the back of my eyes. I blinked them away, embarrassed. Then he added something that changed everything. Grief is the doorway. Faith is what walks you through it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there, breathing in the quiet, letting his words carve themselves into the parts of me that still hurt. What happened next is something I still struggle to describe. Not a vision, not a miracle, not a supernatural event. Just warmth. A warmth in my chest, subtle but unmistakable. Like someone was placing a hand over my heart from the inside. For the first time since the losses that shattered me, I felt held again. I whispered one sentence, the first real prayer I had spoken in months. "Jesus, if you're here, I'm listening." And that was the night I made the decision that changed the entire direction of my life. I would follow him, even if it cost me, even if it scared me, even if the world didn't understand. But choosing faith is one thing. Living it, that's where the real transformation begins. And the next story, the one that tested my decision, is the one where everything almost fell apart. When I look back on the beginning of my walk with Christ, people assume the hardest part was believing. But believing wasn't the hard part. Surrendering was. Because belief can live quietly inside you. Belief doesn't force you to change your life. Belief doesn't ask for sacrifice. Belief doesn't challenge your habits, your fears, your wounds. But following Jesus, really following him, that's where everything gets tested. After that night in the old church, the night I whispered, "Jesus, if you're here, I'm listening," I felt a shift inside me. Small, fragile, but unmistakable. I woke up the next morning feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not happiness. Not excitement. Not motivation. Just hope. A thin, trembling thread of it, but enough to pull me out of the darkness long enough to breathe. But with hope came responsibility. A responsibility I wasn't ready for. You see, when you decide to walk with Christ, the world doesn't clap. It doesn't celebrate you. It doesn't offer shortcuts. Sometimes it pushes back. And the pushback came for me faster than I expected. At the time, I had just started reading scripture, slowly, cautiously, like someone touching fire for the first time. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't have a theological background. I didn't even know where to begin. So I started with the Gospels, and it changed me. Not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly, like water carving stone. One passage struck me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Matthew 16:20, for I remember reading it 3, 4, 5 times. Deny myself, take up my cross, follow him. I had no idea then that these words were about to materialize in my life. It happened during a film production. A big one, important studio, important cast, important everything. I was sitting in a small studio trailer between scenes when one of the producers walked in. Expensive shoes, perfect hair, posture of someone used to people bending round him. He closed the door behind him and sat across from me. "You seem different lately," he said, quieter. "I've just been thinking a lot," I answered. He narrowed his eyes. "Thinking about what?" I hesitated. I didn't want to talk about my faith, not because I was ashamed of it, but because it felt sacred, personal, delicate. But he pressed. "What's going on with you, Keanu?" And so I told him the truth, gently, respectfully, without preaching. "I've been reconnecting with God." Silence. Then he scoffed. "God? Seriously?" I didn't respond. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You know how this industry works. Religion, faith, Jesus. That stuff doesn't play well. You don't want to look unbalanced." I raised an eyebrow. "Unbalanced? I'm trying to help you," he insisted. "Studios get nervous when actors start talking about religion. Makes you look unpredictable." Something inside me tightened. "So you're saying I shouldn't talk about my faith?" He avoided my eyes. "I'm saying it might be better for your career if you kept it private." There it was. The moment I didn't expect. The moment Matthew 16:20 became flesh. Deny myself. Take up my cross. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was being asked to choose between two paths, comfort or conviction. My career or my calling. The producer waited for my answer, staring at me like he already knew which one I would choose. He expected compliance. He expected silence. He expected me to tuck my faith away like a prop after a scene. But I couldn't. Not after everything I'd lived. Not after the grief. Not after the whisper in the darkness. Not after the candle in the empty church. So I said, "My faith is part of who I am. I'm not hiding it." His face fell, not dramatically, but in that subtle way people react when they lose control of a situation. He stood abruptly, smoothing his jacket. "Well," he said coldly, "if that's the path you want, just know it may come with consequences." Then he walked out. I sat there alone in the trailer, heart pounding. I wasn't afraid of losing a role. I wasn't afraid of losing approval. I wasn't even afraid of losing momentum in my career. What I feared most was this. Was I strong enough to follow Jesus even when it cost me something real? And here's the twist, the mini cliffhanger, the part nobody knows. Later that month, I was quietly removed from consideration for a major future project. No explanation, no phone call, just gone. And I knew why. The industry can tolerate eccentricity. It can tolerate weirdness. It can tolerate unconventional personalities. But clear faith, open faith, that's where people get nervous. I remember sitting in my apartment that night, reading the same line over and over, "Take up your cross." And for the first time, I truly understood it. Faith isn't about comfort. Faith is about conviction. I prayed again, not for success, not for opportunities, not for protection. I prayed for strength. Jesus, help me walk this path even when it's hard. Because deep down, I knew something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. If your faith costs you nothing, it isn't guiding you. It's decorating you. And I didn't want decorative faith. I wanted transformative faith. The kind that breaks you open so you can be rebuilt with purpose. But the very next story, the next chapter of this confession, is where I learned the most painful truth. Following Jesus doesn't just test your convictions. It reveals your deepest wounds. And I wasn't prepared for what God revealed next. I used to think following Jesus would make my life feel lighter, cleaner, more peaceful, and in some ways, it did. But no one tells you this part. When you walk toward the light, every shadow in you becomes impossible to ignore. Faith doesn't erase your wounds. It exposes them. And God doesn't heal what you refuse to face. The months after that conflict on the film set were some of the most spiritually intense of my life. Not because of external pressure, but because of what was happening inside me. Everything I hadn't dealt with began rising to the surface. Guilt, grief, shame, unforgiveness, not toward others, but toward myself. I didn't realize how much I had buried over the years. Loss after loss, moment after moment, silent wound after silent wound. One night, it all hit me at once. I was sitting alone in my living room, lights off, staring at a Bible I had barely touched in 24 hours. Something was tugging at me, that same gentle pull I had felt in the church, but instead of comfort, it felt like confrontation. I opened to the book of John. I didn't plan it. The pages fell there. The truth will set you free. I closed the book immediately, because I knew the truth it was referring to wasn't about morality or behavior. It was about honesty. Honesty with God. Honesty with myself. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. So I did what I often do when I'm overwhelmed. I went for a ride. I got on my motorcycle and rode through the city until the traffic thinned, until the lights faded, until the night wrapped round me like a cocoon. I rode without destination, without intention, letting the wind slap against my face, hoping movement would make the pain less real. At some point, I stopped near the edge of Mulholland Drive, overlooking the shimmering lights of Los Angeles, a galaxy built by human hands. From above, it looked peaceful. From far away, everything looks peaceful. I sat on the guardrail, helmet still on, breathing heavily, heart tight in my chest. And then something unexpected happened. I started talking, not out loud, not to myself, but to God. Why me? Why the losses? Why the silence? Why does it hurt so much? Why does following you feel harder than living without you? Questions poured out of me like water breaking through a dam I had held shut for years. And here's the cliffhanger, the part that hit me like a blow to the chest. In the stillness of that night, I felt a question placed gently back into my heart. Why won't you forgive yourself? I froze. Forgive myself for what? For not saving the people I loved. For not being enough for them. For not being strong enough. For surviving when they didn't. The truth stabbed through me. I wasn't angry at God. I wasn't angry at the world. I was angry at myself. That realization broke me. I pulled off my helmet, pressed my hands to my eyes, and cried. Real, helpless, cracked open tears. The kind I hadn't allowed myself to release in years. And as I sat there, a verse came to mind. Not one I had memorized, not one I had studied. It just surfaced, like something God had planted earlier and saved for this moment. My grace is sufficient for you, not my discipline, not my performance, not my strength. His grace. And in that moment, something clicked inside me. I had spent my life trying to earn something that was never offered as a reward. God wasn't asking me to deserve his love. He was asking me to accept it. That night was the closest thing to a spiritual breaking point I've ever experienced. The moment where the weight I carried finally cracked under the truth I had been resisting. I wasn't meant to carry my pain alone. I wasn't meant to heal myself. I wasn't meant to earn grace. I was meant to receive it. But the story didn't end on the mountaintop. It continued a week later, in a place even stranger. I was in a cafe, small, quiet, tucked away in a corner of the city. I went there often because no one recognized me. The waitress was kind. The coffee was simple. The silence was comforting. I was reading when a man walked in, homeless, exhausted, wearing layers of torn clothing. People shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to look. He walked up to the counter, counted a handful of coins, and realized he didn't have enough. The barista, visibly annoyed, told him, "You need 50 more cents." He stepped aside silently. Nobody helped. Nobody even made eye contact. And suddenly, something inside me stirred, a conviction, sharp and clear. I walked up, placed money on the counter, and said, "Let's get him whatever he wants." The homeless man looked at me, eyes wide, surprised not by generosity, but by recognition. "You're him," he whispered. "The actor?" I shook my head. "No, I'm just Keanu." He held his coffee with trembling hands, then said something I still carry with me. "God hasn't forgotten you." I blinked. What? He smiled, toothless, tired, but sincere. "People think the rich need nothing," he said. "But God sees your heart. He knows you're searching." I didn't know what to say. He patted my arm gently. "Don't stop. He's calling you." Then he walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of a quiet cafe with a truth ringing louder inside me than anything I had read in scripture. God speaks through unexpected voices, especially when you're trying to run. And the next story, the next turning point, is the one where I finally understood what it meant to trust Jesus completely, even if it meant risking the last part of myself I had been protecting for years. There's a moment in every spiritual journey when God stops working around you and starts working in you. A moment when faith stops being comforting and becomes confronting. A moment when you realize that following Jesus isn't about feeling protected. It's about becoming transformed. That moment came for me in a place I never expected. On the set of a film. We were filming long hours, sleepless nights, endless retakes. The kind of production that drains you not just physically, but spiritually. I had been praying quietly every morning before work, asking God to guide me, to help me stay grounded, to remind me why I had chosen this path. Most people never knew that during that time, I was battling a war inside myself that no one could see. It wasn't depression this time. It wasn't grief. It wasn't fear. It was pride, the oldest enemy, the quietest one, the one that pretends to be your friend. It began subtly. People praising me, crew members complimenting my discipline, fans showing up at the gates, articles calling me the most humble man in Hollywood. At first, I brushed it off. Humility is a strange thing. The moment you think you have it, you've already lost it. But one day, something exposed the truth. We had a stunt sequence scheduled, a difficult one, but not impossible. I insisted on doing it myself. I'd done dangerous stunts before. I liked the challenge. I liked the adrenaline. And, if I'm honest, I liked the respect that came with it. People think bravery is the absence of fear. But sometimes, bravery is just ego wearing armor. That day, the stunt coordinator approached me. "Keanu, we need you to sit this one out," he said. "It's too risky." I smiled. "I'll be fine." "It's not about being fine," he insisted. "It's about wisdom, but pride is a stubborn voice." "I'll do it," I said. He sighed, defeated. And that should have been a warning. When wise people fall silent, Danger is close. The stunt began, and within seconds, everything went wrong. A cable snapped. A platform shifted. My landing angle changed by just a few degrees, but that's all it takes for a human body to break. I hit the ground hard, harder than I expected. Pain shot through my leg and up my back. The world spun. Voices blurred round me. Cut the cameras. Get medics. Don't move him. I lay there, staring at the ceiling rigging above me, completely still, completely silent in that moment. One thought crashed into me with terrifying clarity. You're going to ruin everything because you couldn't step aside. Pride had almost taken away the very career I had asked God to guide. As medics checked my spine, as people panicked around me, as the set fell into chaos, I felt something else, something deeper, something unmistakably divine. Conviction. Not condemnation, not shame. Conviction. The gentle yet firm realization that God had been telling me not this, not now. And I hadn't listened. When they finally lifted me onto a stretcher, the producer whispered, "You could have died." I didn't respond, because those words weren't surprising. They were revealing. In the hospital, as they took scans and asked questions, I felt completely exposed. Not physically, but spiritually. I realized something painful. I had been asking God to guide my life, but I wasn't willing to surrender control of it. Not truly, not fully, not painfully. When they finally cleared me, no broken bones, only bruising and inflammation, I stepped outside the hospital into the cold air and leaned against a wall, breathing deeply. Then something happened I didn't expect. A young nurse, maybe 25, maybe younger, walked out behind me, holding a small cup of water. She handed it to me without a word. Before I could thank her, she said, "You know, sometimes God has to slow us down before we destroy ourselves." I stared at her. "How did you?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say it." Then she walked back inside, leaving me with a truth I couldn't ignore. I had almost lost everything I valued, not because I didn't follow Jesus, but because I followed him halfway. Obedience isn't partial. Surrender isn't selective. Faith isn't a hobby. It's a posture. And I wasn't fully surrendered yet. But God wasn't done teaching me. The final lesson, the one that broke me and rebuilt me in the same breath, was waiting just round the corner. A moment that would prove whether I truly trusted Jesus or only the idea of him. A moment where I had to choose between everything I thought I needed and the one I finally realized I couldn't live without. People think the greatest tests of faith come in big, dramatic moments, storms, tragedies, miracles, burning bush revelations. But the truth is simpler, quieter, and far more painful. Faith is tested in the moments where obedience costs you something you love. My greatest test came not during tragedy, but during opportunity. A few months after the stunt accident, after the night God confronted my pride, after the cafe encounter that reminded me he speaks through anyone, I received an offer. Not just any offer, a defining offer, a role that could change everything. A role that would lead to awards, prestige, legacy. A role that producers said would cement me in film history. And they were right. It was the kind of part actors wait their entire lives for. I read the script, and it was brilliant, artistic, innovative, emotionally powerful. But there was one problem. One scene, a single sequence, only a few pages long, that asked me to do something completely against the convictions God had been forming in me. Not morally gray, not ambiguous. Something I knew, without a shadow of doubt, would violate the tender place of faith growing inside me. For someone else, maybe it wouldn't have been a sin. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe it wouldn't have meant anything at all. But faith is personal. God speaks differently to each of us. And I knew this scene wasn't for me. I told myself I could overlook it. That it was just acting. That it wasn't real. That God would understand. Excuses are easy when the world claps for them. But every time I tried to convince myself, something inside me went quiet. The same quiet I used to feel before grief swallowed me. The same quiet I used to feel before bad decisions. A quiet that wasn't peace, it was warning. The kind only the Holy Spirit can give. I tried to negotiate with God. I tried to compromise. I tried to bargain. But faith doesn't work like that. You can't follow Jesus with one foot on the path and one foot on the world. One night, I sat at my kitchen table, script open, wrestling for hours. My mind said, "This is everything you've ever worked for. This will take your career to another level. This opportunity might never come again." But my spirit said, "If you sell this piece of yourself, you won't get it back. If you choose this, you aren't choosing me. Trust me, even if it costs you." I stood up, paced the kitchen, sat down again, stood up again, pacing like a man being torn from the inside. Then something happened that stopped me dead in my tracks. I remembered River Phoenix. Not his death, not the grief, not the pain. His integrity. River once told me, if you ever have to trade pieces of your soul for a success, it's not success anymore. Those words hit me like a blow to the chest. So I closed the script, typed the hardest email of my career, and walked away from the biggest opportunity I'd ever been given. When I pressed send, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel strong. One felt terrified, because obedience isn't glamorous. Obedience is lonely. Obedience feels like falling backwards with your eyes closed. The backlash came fast. My agent called. Producers called. Friends texted. "Why would you throw this away? This could change the entire trajectory of your career. You're being irrational. You're ruining your future. You can't do this just because of religion." No one understood. And honestly, part of me didn't either. But something inside me stayed firm. A conviction deeper than fear, deeper than ambition, deeper than public opinion. I knew God was asking me to trust Him, completely, blindly, sacrificially. Days later, I went for a walk. The kind of walk you take when you're questioning everything. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and gold. Palm trees swayed like they were whispering their own prayers. At a crosswalk, I saw a little girl holding her father's hand. She looked up at him with absolute trust. No hesitation, no fear, no doubt. She didn't question whether the light was safe. She didn't question whether the cars would stop. She didn't question the road ahead. She trusted the one who held her. And in that moment, I felt something in me break open. That is the kind of trust Jesus was asking from me. Not understanding, not certainty, just trust. A trust deeper than logic. A trust deeper than opportunity. A trust deeper than ambition. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Okay, Lord, I'm yours, whatever it costs, whatever it changes, whatever it takes." And here's the twist, the mini cliffhanger, the part no one saw coming. 2 weeks after walking away from that film, I received a call with an offer I never expected. A role that fit me perfectly. A story with integrity. A director I admired. A production that aligned with everything I believed. Something better. Something safer for my soul. something God crafted. And in that moment, I learned the most dangerous truth of all. When you give something up for God, what He gives you back is never smaller. But the lesson wasn't complete. There was one more revelation, the deepest one, the final one, the one God had been preparing me for all along. A truth that didn't just change my faith, it changed my identity. And that's the story I'll tell next. The moment I turned down that role, the moment I chose faith over ambition, something inside me shifted. Not instantly, not dramatically, but undeniably. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being guided by fear, or grief, or expectation, or pressure, or the empty longing to be seen. I was being guided by trust. And trust changes everything. Weeks passed, then months. Life returned to its ordinary rhythm. Filming, reading, riding my bike, disappearing into bookstores, drinking quiet cups of coffee in corners where no one noticed me. But inside, something new was growing. Something steady, something peaceful, something I once thought I'd never experience again. A kind of inner stillness. It wasn't because life had gotten easier. It wasn't because pain had disappeared. It wasn't because faith had removed suffering. It was because, for the first time, I wasn't carrying any of it alone. And then, one night, everything crystallized into clarity. I was sitting on my balcony, the city humming gently below me. The air was cool, the kind that makes you breathe a little deeper. I had a cup of tea in my hands, steam rising into the night like a small prayer. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular. Then something happened. Not a vision, not a voice, not a miracle. Just a question, quiet, simple, precise. Why are you afraid to be loved by me? I blinked, stunned, loved. I had asked for guidance. I had asked for strength. I had asked for direction. But love was the thing I had avoided my entire life. Because love requires vulnerability. Love requires trust. Love requires the courage to receive something you don't feel worthy of. I stared into the darkness, heart pounding, throat tight, and whispered, I don't know how. And then, in the stillness, slower than thought, softer than breath, came something I had never truly felt before. Not judgment, not correction, not disappointment, but presence. A presence that wrapped round me like warmth without heat, light without shape, safety without explanation. A presence I didn't need to earn, didn't need to perform for, didn't need to prove myself to. And suddenly, everything made sense. Every struggle, every loss, every wound, every moment of despair, every conversation, every whisper of faith, every small encounter that felt random at the time. They weren't punishments. They weren't accidents. They weren't cosmic cruelty. They were invitations. Invitations to come closer. Invitations to surrender. Invitations to trust. Invitations to be loved. I had spent decades trying to carry the world on my back. My grief, my failures, my guilt, my survival, thinking it was noble to do it alone. But Jesus wasn't asking me to be strong. He was asking me to be His. That night, something inside me broke open, and something even deeper finally healed. I closed my eyes and whispered one sentence I had never had the courage to say before. Jesus, I give you all of me. Not half, not pieces, not the parts that were easy to surrender. All of me, my past, my mistakes, my pain, my pride, my grief. My legacy, my future, my story, my soul. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt whole. Not perfect, not unbroken, not fearless, just whole. Like every shattered part of me had finally found its place again. And that's when I understood the truth I had been running from for years. The danger wasn't in following Jesus. The danger was in living without him. That realization changed everything. And from that moment on, I began to see patterns in my life. Patterns that had been invisible until faith sharpened my eyes. Patterns that revealed something profound. God had always been reaching for me, even when I wasn't reaching for him. Every stranger who comforted me, every coincidence that pushed me forward, every moment of clarity that came out of nowhere, every whisper in the dark, every unexpected act of kindness, every confrontation with my own limitations, every closed door that protected me, every open door that invited me, they weren't random. They weren't luck. They weren't coincidence. They were grace. Grace isn't loud. Grace isn't dramatic. Grace isn't forceful. Grace is patient. Grace is persistent. Grace is personal. Grace waits for you to be ready. And that brings me to what I learned. The lessons that reshape my soul. 1. Faith isn't something you understand. It's something you surrender to. Point 2. God doesn't ask for your strength. He asks for your willingness. 3. Obedience isn't losing freedom. It's discovering purpose. 4. When you give something up for Jesus, he replaces it with something better. Always. 5. Pain isn't evidence of God's absence. It's often the place where he meets you most deeply. 6. You don't find God in perfection. You find him in surrender. 7. Faith doesn't remove the storm. It anchors you through it. 8. Loving God is not the hard part. Believing he loves you, that's the journey. And finally, 9. The greatest risk of your life is believing you have to face it alone. Because you don't. You never did. You never will. When I look back at my life now, I don't see a man who was lucky. I see a man who was carried. Through grief, through loss, through success, through silence, through confusion, through pride, through loneliness, through everything, carried by a love I didn't understand but desperately needed. And if you're listening to my voice right now, if my story reached you in a moment when you needed it, then hear me clearly. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are not too far gone. You are not disqualified. Grace is stronger than your past. Love is deeper than your wounds. And Jesus is closer than your breath. You don't have to earn him. You don't have to impress him. You don't have to prove anything. Just open the door. Because the moment you let him in, truly let him in, everything changes. Not instantly, not magically, but undeniably. You begin to see the world differently. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to understand that every pain you carried was preparing you for the moment you finally allowed yourself to be held. And when that moment comes, when you finally surrender, you realize something breathtaking. Following Jesus wasn't the risk. Living without him was. And I don't ever want to go back.